Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're going to bring you a preview of a Kickstarter game. This one is called Mountaineers. It's from Massif Games. It is a 1 to 6 player game, plays in about an hour and a half, and it is a mountain climbing game. And we're seeing a lot of these. We saw Summit, K2 several years ago.
It is a theme that's definitely, it's a theme that's definitely coming on strong lately.
But look at this. It's
got
a 3D mountain in it.
Believe me, I know there's a 3D mountain on it. I'm behind it and a box. If you can see me back here, I am here doing this review with Jeremy.
Yeah, so this mountain is kind of cool. It actually is double-sided, so there's a variety of different shapes you can take. Plus there's other mountain pieces that you can include as well. All these mountain pieces have 6 main types of terrain on them. The terrain are located on the board, so anytime you have questions about where you are, you just look at the board and it gives you a reference.
Yeah.
And there's also kinds of features on there like huts and glaciers and bridges and caves and so forth. You're going to be moving up the mountain, but this isn't a game about racing. It's about completing paths and doing the most optimal things for the goals or the objectives that you draft at the beginning of the game. Because each player is going to get 6 of these objective cards or climbing routes in the game, and they're going to pick 4 of them. And these are things that they're trying to do on the mountain, like connect rock formations, or go up glaciers, or go down glaciers, or go around all 3 sides of the mountain, and so forth.
Yeah, I think this is for real mountain climbers. Once you've conquered the mountain and gotten to the top, these are the sorts of challenges you sort of take on, which is kind of interesting. We totally expected this to be
a race.
Go up to the top of the mountain just like anyone would, but it's far more objective based.
Yeah, it's completely strategic. So, at the start of the game, each player, as I said, is going to draw from this climbing route deck. Inside of it, you have a variety of different things you're trying to complete. When you look at these cards, they give you a number of things at the top, but it basically will say what that objective is for that card. And there's some icons in there as well, but the far right icon is how many victory points you get at the end if you've completed that route. On the bottom shows you kind of what that route should look like. Now, you don't have to follow it verbatim. It just shows you an example of what that route could be. The top of the card is what you're trying to fulfill, though. And what you're going to be doing on your turn is using actions to be able to fulfill these objective cards. Well, how does the gameplay work? That's from these event cards. And you're going to see this deck depending upon the number of players. There's a number of types of events that players will play with. And I'll talk about this part, David. In this event deck, you have a variety of different types of cards, but there's 3 basic type of cards. You have 1 to 3 player cards. These are your simple events. They're things that aren't going to harm other players. You have 4 to 6 player events that are included in here, and you can up the difficulty level if you wish, or you can make it go down. But these are the ones that if you're in specific locations, you may have a rock fall, or you may have a glacier break up and could hurt players and reduce the supply that they're using. And then there are conditions change cards. Now, in a 4-player game, you're going to play 10 rounds. So there's 40 cards in this deck. There's going to be 4 condition changes that are seated in there in the top 10 cards, the next 10, the next 10, the bottom 10. These will reflect on this board here. Anytime there is a conditions change, it's going to make it harder to climb in very specific portions of the mountain. Yeah,
some of the regions, a lot of those focus on the different regions on each side of the map. Some of them focuses on the elevation. You know, so if you're over 6,000 meters, then you have to use more supplies to move.
Let's talk about the actual event cards themselves. They're all look the exact same way. They have a top portion and then a bottom portion. At the start of every player's turn, the first thing you always do is you draw an event into your hand, and then you enact the top part of the event. The top part will tell you supply counts. Now, supply are these tokens here. These are what are going to allow you to move across the mountain. The cool thing about this is that on every player's turn, no matter who draws the card, every player either gains supply or loses supply, even if you're not the person that drew the card. Now, it'll also tell you how you draw supplies. If you're on certain areas, you could draw supplies. It could hurt just you, or it could hurt everybody at the table, right? The bottom part is used at a different portion of the game. You're going to collect this card and use it either as a special action or a special ability later within the game.
Yeah, or even end of game scoring.
Yeah, actually, yeah, there's someone here that will give you extra points for doing things in addition to the climbing routes that you're trying to collect. Each player could also, if you so wish, start with a climber. There are a variety of different climbers. They're double-sided, and each player will draft 4 of these at the start, or 2 of these at the start, and then they get to pick any one from those 4 options. These give you ongoing abilities, just like most games. Now, if you're playing a 1 or a 2-player game, you have to play with automated climbers. And even if you play with a 4-player game, you can play with automated climbers. These are going to block paths for you going up the mountain. Each player also has trackers.
Yes, these trackers are used throughout the entire game for a variety of things. One, the most obvious way, is as you're climbing and moving around the mountain, you're going to place sequentially, starting with 1 and going up, on the mountain every space that you've moved through or out of. The other way you're going to use these trackers is on this sort of
Upgrade board,
skill board, and on this one you're going to use them starting with number 30 and going down. These are going to be yet another thing you can spend your supplies on. Mostly you're going to use supplies to move around the mountain, but in addition to that, you can use supplies to choose an upgrade. And then when you use that ability, you're going to use maybe extra supplies as opposed to your normal move.
Yeah, and the reason why you start going with the lower numbers going up the mountain is because that allows you to prove to other players at the end of the game that your sequence makes sense, because there's ways in the game. Say I made a climbing route that was numbered 1 through 10 and it fulfilled one of my climbing routes, but someone came across and took away my number 8 by sabotaging me. I would still know that I completed that route, but I only get half points for it.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you put those in sequential order. All right, let's talk about gameplay, right?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so as I said at the very start of your turn, you draw an event. Everybody at the table gains supplies or loses supplies, depending upon what the event says. And then there's also a portion on here that will say something that may affect that player or everybody at the table. Then the player gets to take 0, 1, or 2 climbing actions if they so wish, or just actions in general. There's 3 types of actions that you get to take. You can spend 1 token to move your climber. Now, this is your climber. They'll start at the very base of the mountain, and you can move basically anywhere around a specific area. So as we look at this mountain, which is completely rotatable, if you so wish, when you move, you get to move in any area that's the 6 spaces around that climber, making sure that you can never stop in an area where another player's climber is or another player's marker is.
Yeah, you can also even move around the edges of the mountain.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself on this edge, you can climb around just to the other side and even, in some cases, move diagonally up, since it is effectively one of the 6 pegs around your location.
Yep, so you can spend 1 token to move 1 space, or you can spend 5 tokens to upgrade any of the 10 areas on your upgrade board, or you can spend any number of upgrade tokens that you've already upgraded to move. Now that may sound difficult, but here's how it works. You have to spend 5 in order to just get the upgrade. Once you have the upgrade, then it has an additional cost to use that upgrade, but it makes your movement more efficient, either through rocks or allows you to use a helicopter to go from one area to another, allows you to sabotage other players. There's even one in here that allow you to use new maps. So say you have a climbing route that you just know you're not going to be able to fulfill, you can spend some of your supply as an action to draw another climbing route in hopes that you can complete that one instead. So you take 0, 1, and 2 actions, and then you get the option of taking a special action. You may say, well, what is a special action? As I said, at the bottom of each of these event cards, you have special actions. These are one-time uses. Once you use them, they go away, and then they're gone. But they allow you a lot of flexibility in the way that you move or give you free movement up or down the mountain in specific ways. And you just continually repeat this process over and over until all 40 cards in a 4-player game are gone, trying to complete those routes as best you can.
And actually, one thing that we passed over is when you're moving, Jeremy did mention sabotage. And there's another thing you can do. You have these little lock tokens. And if you're a mountain climber, which I am not, you can, it represents one of those tools you can use to really lock in your position so that you don't fall. So if you're thinking one of your pieces is going to be sabotaged when someone moves into it, you can lock that piece so you don't lose that.
That's right. At the end of the game, you're going to count up all the victory points that you've collected from the routes that you've completed. Everyone's going to show all their routes and prove that they've completed those up on the mountain. Now, some of them require you to do specific routes in a row where you can't break up. There's the ones that allow you or make you not use a helicopter. If someone's broken up your route and say that route was worth 8 points and you completed it, but someone broke it and you can prove that they broke it, you only get half points. Also, the great thing is the more you climb, the more points you get. Every single marker that you leave on the mountain, whether they fit a climbing route or not, give you an extra victory point at the end of the game.
Yeah, so you want to keep climbing. If you think you're going to focus on just sabotaging everybody, that's not going to score you those points.
That's basically the game. This is a really cool idea.
It harkens back to when we set this up the other night. It reminded me of like an old a game from my past, you know, that had all these big pieces, the kind of stuff that you'd see from maybe restoration games.
And one of the cool things when we got this prototype, obviously the more players you have, the better, because it constricts the ability to move around the board. But it goes up to 6 players. They do have an option, and they've been talking about it, making a larger mountain. And all it requires is a different base to be able to put those 4 pieces to get them a 4 or a 5-sided mountain, and so forth going forward. So. Yeah,
and keep in mind too, even though this looks really cool, it is a prototype, so a lot of these pieces will change. A lot of the graphics on this board will change.
Yeah,
it's definitely in prototype stage right now.
So that's Mountaineers from Massif Games, 1 to 6 player game. It can be played solo. You're just using automated climbers. It takes about an hour and a half to get through. If this interests you guys, go back it now. Ask us questions. We'll be here to answer them for you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
This Kickstarter preview has been brought to you by Man vs. Meeple in sponsorship with Quartermaster Logistics. Take a look at all of their fulfillment solutions at qmlogistics.com.